Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your perseverance. Listening to the previous section, as Sándor Nagy has already mentioned, the event was very exciting because there was a dispute between rival sectors of the energy industry, and my Czech colleague coming from the transmission operators field could talk about the integration of the Czech, Slovak and Hungarian market and the cooperation of the V4 and their success. At least 3 of us from the V4. And I would also like to start from this point. The transmission operators have lots of challenges, especially in the field of development and operation. And there have been many points raised. I would not like to reiterate these, but I would like to rely on the background already presented by the other colleagues. So we have an integrating market with energy policy challenges that we have to meet, and the transmission network in Europe is an essential facility that we have to provide access to with on equal footing on a continuous basis in order to guarantee the supply for the consumers. And I will talk in detail of many aspects, but it is obvious that in the long term we have to develop this infrastructure and this network. Obviously, not only an extensive development is important, but also the maintenance of quality. And of course, I have a perspective from the domestic market. I will not go into the details of concrete projects, but it is true that we have great challenges in this area, and we have lots of problems with regard to authorization, not only access of construction investors, be it biomass or other renewable energy resources, power plants, but also those investors who are constructing the transmission lines or distribution lines. So it is important to extend these networks in order to transmit to the consumers the energy resources where an intensive trade can arise and synergies can be exploited by the individual market players. These are the basic expectations that we would like to meet. And if we are already in the framework of the V4, in these smaller regions, then the map shows us the future investments that we are pursuing. For example, the interconnection with Slovakia, which has already been launched. And if we take one step ahead, then the whole network development on the European level shows that the social welfare and return in the investment can be guaranteed if we look at the network demands in context, and the transmissions operators European network takes this into consideration in its 10-year network development plan. This network development plan has to be revised every year by all systems operators through a market modeling, by taking demand into consideration, and we always have to take into consideration the returns and the issues of the problems inherent in preparation and difficulties. Independently of this, We must also consider the opinions emerging in different areas where financing can be involved not only from the member states but from other sources. And one other more concrete matter, the north-south corridor. I wasn't here in the morning, but as far as I remember, this gas transmission line has already been mentioned, and I showed it to you on the map. Well, there are also coordinations underway in this regard, and of course this is not just a bilateral relationship, and these are the concrete plans that seem to be realized. Market integration is an issue which has been already touched upon, but I would also like to talk about the success of these steps taken. I think we can be proud of these. A few diagrams, maybe these are the diagrams which are the most telling for engineers. It shows us that with September 12, market integration was achieved, and there was our expectations were met. The sense and success of this is that if there are no market or technical difficulties or impediments, then markets do optimize their functioning. If there is an impediment, of course, for example, bottlenecks could be such obstacles. There we see an opening of the margin. This was something very typical, but now in the 2/3 of the cases we do not meet these obstacles, and the exchange prices also reflect this. And if we look at the trade and the data to see whether or not these possibilities are flexibly used, we can see the morning period that there's an export from Slovakia to Hungary, and during the day the route is exchanged, and there's a opposite direction of trade, which is a logical harmony in commerce and energy. Of course, not only extensive development and the construction of new infrastructure and transmission lines is important, which is very costly. Of course, we need this, but at the same time, we should use our transmission lines that we already have in a smart and efficient way, especially in the transient periods where we cannot solve these bottlenecks, or, for example, the issues of putting renewables on the grid. These are new challenges that we have to face. So in order to meet these problems, we have to use our grids and infrastructure more efficiently, and this is actually dealt with through smart technologies and interventions. I always say that transmission networks are by nature smart because they are modern technologies and they can be used pretty fast. But another aspect is that the security of supply must always be guaranteed, so we can only use best practices and the best available technological level. So from this perspective, first we have to test all new infrastructure. This is the pilot project system, and I would not like to go into detail, but it is important that the supply side based on climate changes can be flexible. The consumers should be incentivized and included into this very exciting, from a technological point of view, very exciting, but also from a legal and a market perspective, very exciting cooperation scheme. And it is important to take these into consideration in order to meet successfully our future goals. we are at a disadvantage in comparison to our neighboring countries because we are inflexible on the production side, especially from the point of view of the heat power plants, because these cannot flexibly meet the demands of the consumers, and the production side has to meet challenges. And we have to find solutions and instruments that can make the system more flexible. This, again, has to be solved through everything that we have. In case of lots of small distributors, we have attempted to build on ownership and build on centers or regulatory systems and centers between the small power plants in order to create fluid communication with the systems operator, and this way we can also produce for reservoirs, reserves. Of course, we also have to develop our technology. We always have pump and reservoir systems in the neighboring countries. This is a very good and well-tested system. Of course, here again, authorization is a problem, and we will see in the long run whether there's any potential here. Like I said, liberalized markets have a multitude of players or actors with competing interests, and it is very difficult to plan or forecast or estimate their actions and the trends in trading. However, in lack of such data, it is very difficult to prepare the availability of the transmission system. So we have to monitor the market trends and draw conclusions and feed back this information into the cycle. For example, modeling can help us to see how we have to change regulation, how we have to cooperate in a better way. And then, coming to the end, I would like to speak about regional cooperation, even though this is a regulatory pressure that the legislator also prescribes the duty of cooperation between transmission system operators, but it is also in our interest, in order to be efficient. To give you a few examples, for example, the regulation of load and capacity, this has to be very flexible and has to respond in a timely manner if we coordinate this, and we have lots of international examples. For example, the Czech and the Slovak system cooperates on this level based on the German transmission systems operators examples, and everyone tries to follow this example. I would not like to go into detail into these abbreviations, but we are also thinking about such forms of cooperations logically within the framework first of the V4 partners, and then proceeding along this line with other partners. Another question is the TSC, that is the Operation Security Cooperation, meaning that the regional transmission system operators should participate. MOVIR is just an observer and not a full member. The main goal is that the primarily bottleneck problems where there is a greater demand for capacity than what is available, this should be dealt with in different periods, and these are great challenges where procedures have been elaborated through information support systems and data exchange. And if I have a little time, I will speak of one recent example of this. Bilateral agreements have already been concluded before, and we want to maintain these with our neighbors. And here also the common solution of problems and expectations are also important. For example, network topology interventions are also such instruments that help us in order not to start bargaining where the challenge arises, but to be able to choose from a fixed number of instruments. Also, a very topical issue is the European network codes, that is the legal background of network access, where integrated and coupled national network systems during overhaul and the phasing of overhaul, these systems have effects on each other, and we have to cooperate in timing these overhauls with our neighbors. And here we see a sort of threat or danger that we have to think of which cross-border elements belong to which region is a problem. We are fighting for approval that this region solved this problem quite well, that each system had an overlapping network where cooperation was timed and everybody's interests could be taken into consideration. So there are details that are very important also in this context. And there's a regional situation monitoring system where we can be really proud of in our region. About 4 years ago, we started the implementation of this regional situation monitoring system, where we have to guarantee that there's a status model with all the necessary parameters with the environmental conditions in order to see that we can monitor whether or not there are any events that could affect us. And there's also an indicator green lamp or amber lamp type monitoring and information exchange. And we have also a red light when there's a very threatening incident. So these are the instruments that help us to create a reliable system and to monitor the actual or current status of the system. And we can develop this into a European-wide system within the ENSO-E. So we can be proud of this cooperation in our region. This was what I originally planned, and I would like to bring you an example regarding the challenges we face under certain circumstances. And here I left the original presentation that we could see from our Polish colleagues in the last ENSO-E council meeting. On the 22nd of August, there was an incident which required a regional cooperation or intervention of various transmission systems operators to solve the problem. I have to say that it is pretty, it happens pretty often that the North German wind energy production and photovoltaic energy production, irrespective of climate situations, we have a larger load on the network, and this is channeled towards the consumers if the demand is lower than towards the reservoirs in the Alps especially, and the consumers are typically in Southern Europe. So we have a very strong load, and this can overlap pressurize the system. And of course, not only the German system. And we can say that the renewable energies were incentivized too much and the grid wasn't prepared for this. So we have to develop the grid structure in order to face this load. So in such cases, what happens is what we can see on this picture or figure. Certain elements are under an immense load, and we need, within the countries, in the affected networks, we need immediate intervention. First, everyone attempts to fix the situation on their own grid, for example, by restructuring the grid or by restructuring the production in their own countries. And if this isn't enough, then we need the international solutions, for example, the single current interconnections, such as in the Scandinavian countries, where you get well-regulated flows. And these can actually balance out the critical elements on the grid. So this is a type of intervention which can actually necessitate the cooperation of 4 to 5 countries. So the next set of instruments, here the picture doesn't actually move. I will try to somehow retrieve it. So I couldn't do that, but what happened was actually that the endangered transmission system operator alerted everyone through an amber lamp, and in a fixed list he initiated an intervention from these instruments, and there was a really serious capacity set against the flow coming from Germany to the direction of Austria in the amount of 900 megawatt in order to unload the grid elements. So I would not like to go through all the detailed steps, but the point is that if this transmission system operator has no preparation for this event, it couldn't be guaranteed that the transmission system operator will choose the right instruments, because there is a very short time, a few seconds or a few 10 seconds. In that case, it was 18 seconds for this domino effect to take place in order to take these measures. So we do have to actually prepare for this. So I have to say, from a technical point of view, we can develop lots of things. As far as I know, financial problems are the ones that we are still facing, because those power plants which have been reconstructed for these times had to be compensated, but whether or not and how the countries can compensate each other is not something that has been solved until now. Thank you very much for your attention.